What's up, guys? There have been massive combat changes to Infinite Galaxy, essentially a full-scale combat rebalance. There's a lot of questions going around, so we're going to go over what we figured out so far. So let's get into it. Alright, so today we are talking about all the combat changes introduced to Infinite Galaxy, and there are a lot of them. We're still trying to wrap our heads around it, but accompanying these combat changes, we've been given the opportunity to essentially trade in various ships for other ships, the warships themselves, so the cruisers, the destroyers, and the frigates. We can kind of change the ratio of those that we own. Additionally, we can reset flagships, getting back all of the materials and the Federation credits or Advanced Federation credits that we put into upgrading them. And we can even reset our crew, essentially redistributing everything about our accounts. And I think this is a very generous thing done by the developers, considering the sweeping combat changes that they made. I think this is a very fair way to allow players to reposition themselves, kind of adapting to the new changes. So as for the changes themselves, there are still a handful of small unknowns, like how specifically certain weapons calculate with armor and shields and how exactly range comes into play. But in broad strokes, we do have a pretty good idea of what's going on. The major changes, I've got some notes over here. One of the major changes is now each type of ship will prioritize the same type of warship on the enemy team as soon as it gets in range. This means that as soon as cruisers see other cruisers, those enemy cruisers become their primary target. Then they will prioritize the type of enemy ship that they are strong against. So cruisers are very good at destroying destroyers. So once all the enemy cruisers are wiped out, cruisers will then refocus to destroyers. And finally, they will turn their focus on the ship that does the best against them, which in cruisers' instance is frigates. So all of the ships are going to behave like this. They're going to attack similar warships. Then they're going to attack what they get a bonus against. And then finally, they're going to attack what is getting a bonus against them. And so one of the things that this has done is essentially greatly increase the value of mixed fleets, because now ships are going to prioritize taking out their own, and then they are immediately going to turn on whatever they get a significant advantage on. Whereas the old system, they were always attacking whatever was closest. So things like frigates and destroyers were getting wiped out really, really quickly by the sum total of the warships that you had in your fleet. So this changes quite a bit. Additionally, they've changed a lot of the stats for the warships. So frigates increased their attack, but got less HP. But they did essentially optimize the shield and armor, because certain different classes of frigates, some had really, really high armor with low shield, and some had really, really high shield with low armor. So they've kind of balanced those out a bit more. As for destroyers, they got a slight increase to both attack and HP, making them just a little bit sturdier, because they weren't really fulfilling their purpose as the intermediate between frigate and cruiser, and they should now in theory. And again, they kind of adjusted the difference between the values of the shield and armor between the two classes of destroyers. And then cruisers as well got increased HP, increased shield, and increased attack. So cruisers just got upgraded across the board, which is pretty interesting because cruisers were already pretty strong. And there's some really, really strong ships out there right now that benefit using cruisers, the Cyclops in particular. So that is an interesting change indeed. But arguably the biggest change that they've made is they've added this auxiliary system to flagships. And what that essentially means is this only applies to the gold level flagships. So essentially the ships that you either get from event rewards or can buy with the Advanced Federation credits. And what they've done is they've added this ability right here. It's the last ability, and it awakens. They've called it Awakening Tech, I believe. And this Awakening Tech comes online once you hit rank 7 of that flagship, and it makes a tremendous difference. So you can see here for this one, for example, for my Cyclops, it is increasing the damage 210% according to the deployed fleet power, which is just nuts. That's so much damage. And then any successful hits landed by my fleet will increase all cruiser attack for 6 seconds by 25%, and that's on a 12-second cooldown. So again, that is just a tremendous bonus to cruiser attack and just to damage overall, up 210%. It's really a lot. And then it's also just considered essentially a kinetic weapon in that it itself has 6,354 attack with 18 range. So a really, really big changes coming in. And more importantly than that, you can now run 2 flagships in any given fleet, a primary and an auxiliary. So the way that's going to work is the primary flagship, once it reaches level 15, and those are just the levels here, so that's a pretty low bar. Then you can bring in an auxiliary flagship, and the health, the shield, the armor, and the damage bonuses of that auxiliary flagship will take full effect for your fleet. The leadership effects will be cut in half so that it's not giving too much of a crazy leadership boost, and the outfitting won't take effect. But this is interesting and a little bit misleading. When they say the outfitting won't take effect, essentially what they're saying is that the crazy damage being provided by the flagship, so for example, like a weapon like this, adding 17.2% kinetic weapon attack, that won't be counted. And that's, you know, both the bonuses to the fleet and the weapon itself, what it's dealing. However, what makes this a little bit misleading is equipping additional weapon slots. The early testing suggests that regardless of the quality or class of weapon you equip, as long as you are equipping some weapon, it is at least opening up those weapon slots. So while you don't have to equip a good weapon on your auxiliary flagship, equipping any weapon is at least opening up the other weapons to be firing in tandem with the primary weapon of that flagship. So it seems at this time that it's a good idea to at least equip some green weapons in every weapon slot of that auxiliary ship, but you can save your good weaponry for a primary flagship. All right, and one more quick note on this whole rebalance. If you are a spender, right now you have an interesting opportunity in that you can respec flagships, for example. So if we go here to flagship reset, I'm not going to reset my Cyclops, but if I were, you can see all the materials that I would get back, and in particular, I would get a large number of these Advanced Federation credits. What's interesting is, even if you go for a ship that you can't buy with Advanced Federation credits, so let's take the Hephaestus, this would still return me a large amount of these Advanced Federation credits. What this means is that right now you can essentially buy the blueprints for any gold ship and get them returned to you if you want as Advanced Federation credits. So to give you some numbers, this is a $5 offer here that gets you 1,100 Advanced Federation credits, which is almost but not even 20 blueprints for a ship. Alternatively, you can go here to, oh yeah, here we are, so flagship. And this would be $6 here, and you would get 25 of these blueprints. And that is going to return to you 1,200 Advanced Federation credits plus the value of the other 5, so about 1,500. So you'd be getting 1,500 Advanced Federation for $6 as opposed to 1,100 for $5. So you have an opportunity, if you want to buy a bunch of these blueprints, to get a lot more Advanced Federation credits in return, depending on the value of some of the packs. So food for thought. So other changes that came through with this update, they actually added new levels to the tactical training base, and they added higher level pirates up to level 35. So I'm going to restructure my fleets a little bit. In particular, I'm going to be building towards 1 mega fleet. I'm going to do my best to try to get 2 gold ships that are both at least rank 7, so we have both of those auxiliary abilities online. And I want to put that new fleet to the test. So let's see what we can manage. All right, so after everything's been said and done, we've done a bunch of respecking. I am really happy with my captains here.